We're in full swing of fall, like mid-November. And in Connecticut, the leaves are basically turned different colors. They're beautiful. They're starting to fall off the trees. Also in Connecticut, there's a location, Elliot's Loft, where When Black Men Talk is done and produced. I just happen to be the host, Mark Elliott. Appreciate you being where you are and giving me an air. I wanted to kind of get together and do a show a little different from maybe the norm that has been done in the past, and maybe it's not, but we're going to touch on something that basically that I think we think about it, but we don't think about it enough. And I think there's something we should do more than just think about. I think we should act and move. And I'll go back and start with the gift of life. You think about that in general. It's a precious gift from God. The Lord God formed man of dust from the ground. He breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Now, as we live through life, basically, we don't kind of think of our mortality in a sense, but whether we think about it or not, it's there. It's the subject of death. But a lot of us black males are dying not due to natural causes. We're dying during it by our own hands, I should say, intentionally taking our own life. Here's something that we may not be thinking about, may not be at the forefront. But young black males are intentionally taking their lives at an alarming rate. From 2007 to 2020, the suicide rate jumped up 144% for ages 10 through 17. Now, I'm not sure how old you are, but think about your life between 10 and 17. 10 and 17. That's prime years of a child's life. 10 to 17. But you have these young males taking their lives between those ages. And the rate in general for suicide with males are basically decreasing, not drastically, but it's coming down. So when I think about this and I approach this, there's some sadness, but at the same time, it's not helpless. We can do some things about it. I know one person that has basically heard the call, has given birth to this to do something about it. And she started she's the founder, I should say, of Sons of Steel, or Son of Steel. If I'm saying that incorrectly, she will correct me in a matter of a minute or two. I'm talking about Lady Dr. Marcy. I want to bring her in because to me, this is a huge call. So good morning. Welcome to When Black Men Talk. Always happy to have you aboard. We're not doing common ground this particular one. But again, Son of Steel, or I might be saying missing the plural. This is something I feel, and I know you probably feel it as well, was given to you to birth. How did you get there? And what does that feel like to be there?
Good morning, and thank you for having me on. And yeah, normally our conversations are, you know, deep but more lighthearted. And so this topic, I want to first and foremost say thank you for bringing the conversation to your platform and giving us an opportunity to have an enlightened conversation about where we are in the status of the mental health for our youth. And yes, it's Sons of Steel, so it's plural because we got our sons. We got lots of sons out there. So it's Sons of Steel, uh, and really it came from my 15 or so years working in behavioral health. I started out dealing with domestic violence prevention, domestic violence awareness, uh, and then moved into substance abuse. And from there, what I realized was there was a lot of crossover between mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence, and ultimately suicide and incarceration both. And for me, I was like, awareness isn't working. How do I do something different where I can really shift the atmosphere, move the needle on where we are in tackling what seems to be some insurmountable obstacles? When you think about domestic violence, incarceration, suicide, all of that, it just seems like the more we dig, we're not making a difference. I used to liken my DV to spitting in the ocean. Like you just never feel like you're making a difference. And so I thought, you know, what am I missing in all of this? And what I realized was I was talking to the wrong audience. I was starting too late and I was talking to the wrong people. And what I mean by that was the majority of my work at the time with domestic violence prevention and so forth uh, dealt with women and families on that side of it. And when we think about domestic violence specifically, disproportionately the victims are women, which means disproportionately the offenders are men. Uh, and so I'm like, well, who's talking to the men? And what I found was there are very little resources out there for men. There's very little resources out there that say this is for men. So even though the counselors, the clinicians, the coaches, the trainers will talk to men, they're not marketing and tailoring their message and really digging into men's issues and men's mental health and what's driving some of these behaviors. And so for me, that was where I'm like, okay, we got to do something different. And I started out with I called it the Silent Sons Initiative. And what I realized was I didn't want our young men to wear that badge. I wanted them to have something that was powerful and something that says unbreakable, that I can do this. And so I shifted from the Silent Sons Initiative, and that's how we became the Sons of Steel. To me, that gives a more powerful image, and it's giving the young men a message that says, you know, no matter what I come up against, I'm going to be prepared, and that's our motto: prepared, positioned, and pressure proof. So that's kind of the background of how we came about. And that's why this conversation is near and dear to my heart because, as you just stated, it's affecting our young men at an alarming rate, and specifically our Black males. And we've talked many times about Black men being reluctant to talk about mental health and to seek support for mental health. And so for me, we're not really focusing necessarily on the mental health aspect of it. Let's tweak it a little bit and talk about what we can do, which is some training, which is some preparatory work, which is some proactive interventions. So that's what Sons of Steel is all about.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I want to go where you just said about the mental health part of it, because culturally, I think there's a deep mistrust in our community when it comes to mental professionals. And for me, I think that plays a big part in terms of treating it at any age when it comes to the Black male. We carry this idea or this thought about mental health or seeking help for mental health. And I think that really stands in the way of us really healing and being better. Your response.
Oh, absolutely. That is exactly why my approach is not mental health treatment. I have a background in behavioral health. I study psychology, applied psychology, all those types of things, but that's just going to run people off. But when you understand that at the end of the day, what we really need are strategies and we need skills and we need education, then it becomes a training mechanism. And so it's more for Sons of Steel, it's cognitive emotional performance. Basically, how do we use how we think and how we feel and how we behave and then come to, as you like to say, a common ground so that we can remain composed under pressure so that we don't find ourselves doing the whole crash out thing, or lashing out or turning to substances or turning to violence. Um, Understanding how one thinks, why they think the things that they think, and how that translates into beliefs and behaviors. All of that stuff is connected. And so it's really off the field training. I work specifically with young athletes, and they grow up training for on the field work, but the focus is so heavily lasered and locked in on the field performance. A lot of the off the field coping strategies and communication skills and things like that kind of get lost. As long as they're good on the field, and when that spotlight comes on, they know how to pick up the ball and perform, everybody's okay. But they might not be okay. And what we're saying is, I don't have no skin in the game. Whether you score a touchdown, whether you hit that 3-point shot, you hit a home run, I don't care. I don't care. I want you to win at the game of life. And so truly being able to be an objective voice and truly be in my son's corner, that's where Sons of Steel sits. We're always advocating for our young men. We're advocating for the athlete. We're advocating for the human off the field who performs as an athlete on the court, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I think in natural, in general, as we look at athletes, we kind of assume they live this lavish life. They have abundance of funds, money at their disposal, materialistic things. And we don't tend to break it down to an emotional standpoint to where they're going through things that any other person could be going through. And a lot of times, what they're doing on the field or the court tends to overshadow some things they're feeling. And we're seeing that, kind of play itself out because in common day, current day, there are athletes taking their lives and they're leaving us with, being surprised and wonder what's going on. And part of that's because we didn't even think about them emotionally. We're more concerned about what they do to entertain us, what
Mm-hmm.
they do to basically win or lose. We forget that they're human. And even if you break it down real small and just go to winning and losing, we assume when we get upset, when they drop a ball or lose something, imagine what they must go through.
Right.
And as we're watching and we're paying attention, we never think beyond the win, the losses, the performance, the whatever the case may be. And these young men, most of them have been doing this all their lives. When you think about it, they're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with a lot of different things now, in my opinion, starting to come to the surface. But I wanted to bring something to the forefront because I found this doing a little research. I found this to be interesting when they said in 2024, Black males receive mental health treatment through prescriptions, medications at 52% of the total population. Now, I know we just spoke of earlier, culturally, we don't believe in the mental health professionals. But when I came across this point where we're taking medications at a high rate of the total population for our mental health, it almost goes against what we were just talking about because that rate is fairly high. I want to get your thoughts on that.
So I think that that's a little bit, it leans, it's a little misleading. And the reason why I say that is you have to remember that not only any MD can prescribe these medications. So they're not necessarily seeking mental health treatment, but when they go to their primary cares and medical doctors, they can still get these prescriptions. So the rate of prescriptions being taken is not necessarily reflecting of them seeking mental health treatment. Mental health treatment goes beyond the pharmacology. That's just the medication side of it. That's only one aspect of mental health treatment. And when you also look at the multiplicity of uses for some of these drugs, um, they can be used for substance abuse, they can be used for mental health, and they can be used for other reasons. So when we look at some of the, even some of the current weight loss medications, right, they have multiple uses. And in some cases, those uses overlap the mental health side of it. So just because they're drugs that are used for mental health doesn't necessarily mean that they're seeking treatment for mental health.
Very good point. Very good point. It's Dr. Marcy Baptiste, myself, Mark Elliott. This is When Black Men Talk. We're taking a look at the male black suicidal rate, and that suicide is going on with black males, young and older. We're kind of focusing more on the younger, but the age really when it comes to suicide is varies when you think about it. I want to look at some risk factors because they're saying also that the risk factors are different for black males. An average, when people do when you look for something acute at something where someone might be depressed, they pull away from doing some things they like. They may not be eating, but in reality, they're saying for younger black males, anger, aggression, irritability is basically some signs that we should be zeroing in on and paying attention to, other than the other ones that might be more you know, common to other races or other young males. But the black male, if he's walking around, younger male, if he's walking around anger, he has this built up aggression, he's irritable, those should be cues that we kind of lean into and start to think about what's really going on. And ironically, a lot of times when we look at younger black males, Dr. Marcy, and they're expressing anger or aggression, we kind of just chuck it off a little bit and think there's nothing really that much behind it. That's just them being youthful. And it's a time now, maybe it's a time as a wake up call to say we need to look deeper when those cues are presenting themselves, your reaction.
Oh, 100%. That's our primary focus. That's why I say that cognitive emotional. One of the big things we deal with is emotional regulation. How do you manage the emotions? And some people think, oh well, they're not lashing out, so the problem is resolved. No, because there's also this thing called suppression. And so we see two different, they handle them differently, right? So it starts out oftentimes as outward aggression, anger. And let me just say too, when it comes to sports and competition, that aggression is awarded. You get accolades for your level of aggression, particularly when we're looking at the NFL, rugby, boxing. The more aggressive you are, and the harder you hit, the more you punch. Well, how do you turn that off? If you're recognized and you're applauded for that on the daily, how do you turn that off the field? So drop a pin there. Um, but that anger and aggression is the primary thing when we're talking about that cognitive emotional connection. That's what we're talking about: anger management, regulating your emotions, not suppressing them. Regulation means I'm going to react in a certain way based on certain circumstances, but my reaction needs to be at an appropriate level in correlation to what the trigger was. So if somebody calls me a name, I should be able to walk away from that and not really trip out, stress out, crash out behind that. If somebody punches me in the face, I'm probably going to punch them back, right? And so, but then I still have to be able to bring myself back to an emotional baseline that says, okay, the situation is over. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Now I can move on. And what happens a lot of times is they just get kind of stuck in that cycle of ultra aggression where you start to look and think like the whole world's against me. You know, this is what people expect. And again, when you're awarded for some of those behaviors, it's kind of hard to turn it off in other areas and realize in my relationship, I don't have to be hard. I don't have to be aggressive. I don't have to be physical. I can use my words. I can communicate my feelings. I can listen. And those skills are oftentimes not taught to our athletes. They're just not. And that's not a criticism to anyone, but I think it's time. And like you said, this is that wake up call to say, let's get back to making the main thing the main thing. And the main thing needs to be them being okay, being being more than okay, but genuinely being good as far as their mental, their physical, their emotional, psychological, spiritual, all that well-being needs to be at an appropriate baseline. And when those things start going helter kelter, we have to give them tools to deal with it. We can't just expect them to fix something that they've never been taught was even a problem, let alone given the skills to be able to self regulate it. So that's what Sons of Steel is all about. Let's give you the tools, let's give you the skills, let's talk about scenarios, let's walk through situations. How do you handle these things? And when you're confronted with something that you don't know how to deal with, who do you go to? Who do you talk to? And how do you talk to them? Because sometimes they just don't have the words for the conversation to express what they're feeling. So I could literally just keep talking. So let me stop.
Oh, you're doing very well. I want to do this though. I want to zero the focus, and I want to zero the focus to the mothers, the fathers, the grandmothers, the grandfathers, the uncles, the aunties, and let's put them in the focus of the age of 10 to 17 of these males, in a sense, and they're noticing the anger, they're noticing the aggression, they're noticing the irritability. What can they do now that we've made this known? What can they do at those points? What should they be doing? How should they respond to this when they're around these males or family? Because a lot of this goes on right underneath our nose with people that we know, people that we love, our friends, our loved ones. And a lot of times, again, we kind of just assume it's not much. But let's speak to people that are supposed to be the guardians. They're paying attention, understanding, showing empathy, showing compassion. These folks, how do we speak to them? What we say to them about these cues? How can we help them to understand there's more attention and focus need to be given to this?
So on my website, sonsofsteel.org, there is, it's called a Code Red Risk Assessment. It's 10, 15 questions. It takes about 3 minutes to complete it. Um, I would recommend that anybody who has a young man in that age bracket, I would say anywhere from 11 to 25, who is in your life, take that risk assessment. It literally takes 3 minutes, and it gives you an idea of the level of risk that your young person is facing. And so I think that's a very easy, it's a very simple step to say, is my young person in a good space or are they not? So that's one thing that they can do. And that's code, it's sonsofsteel.org /code -red. But that's one aspect. That's going to give you that real high level. Do I have something to be concerned about, or does this something that requires immediate intervention? And so it talks about the things to look for. What do those signs look like based on how you answer those questions? So that's one aspect. The second aspect is to get out of your own way. And this is going to sound kind of harsh when I know we're talking about parents, grandparents, things like that, but get out of your own way. Make sure that you're keeping your child's well being at the forefront and not dollar signs. And that's unfortunately the realness of where we are today in a lot of cases, especially when it deals with athletes. But non-athletes, again, making sure that you have dealt with your own mental health, that maybe you're harboring. And that's what that assessment does, is it kind of takes you and your element and your beliefs out of the equation, and it just asks some very general questions that helps you to say, okay, is my young person at risk or are they not? But definitely, if you're seeing a young man who is consistently angry, and angry, as we say, mad for no reason, that is a tremendous red flag, and that requires immediate intervention. So seek coaching, seek training. Your young person may not want to go to a counselor. Sons of Steel, that's what we do. That's why we do it the way we do it, because they don't always want counseling, but they do need some training. They do need some support. And being willing to elicit the support and the training that your young person needs is really what being a parent is all about. As a mom myself, oftentimes I wanted to fix things for my kids. And it took me a while to realize I'm not always the solution, because sometimes I'm part of their problem. And they have to be able to have a non-biased party to kind of help them dig through and let them speak openly and know that what they say is just between y'all. It's not going back to their parents. It's not going back to their coaches. Um, but sometimes we're the problem, and we can be the solution, but get ourselves out of the middle of it.
We are the problem. Yeah, I'm gonna stay there for a minute or two because I want to draw a scenario based on we being the problem. Let's just take those young males from the ages 10 to 17, and let's say hypothetically they don't have a father in their life or a father figure in their life. Not just at the age of 10 to 17, hasn't been there all the time. And this is common. It's nothing new. And basically, there's a lot of quiet turmoil based around that and knowing that's been there for a while. So, getting out of our own way, I love that. That should be my mantra, still is to an extent. We all should get out of our own ways. But the scenario that I'm giving here is that when you know that's been prevalent and you're starting to see anger, and it could be the other way around. It could be the father with the child and the mother is not available, not there. But when you start to see anger and aggression and irritability in the child, let's not overlook that fact. Let's not play dumb and we don't act like what could possibly be going on. Let's not turn a blind eye and act like I'm one doing the job of two. Let's be real about this, because this could be some of what's going on. And as you said earlier, these males don't know how to express. They don't have a place to express. And they're not going to come to the person that they've been with and express it because they're not sure how that's going to be received. But I think sometimes we know what the problems are. We know what the problems are. And we play stupid and act like we don't. And it seemed like sometimes in our community, we think if we don't address it, we don't say anything, it automatically gets better. Or if we run to church 6, 7 days a week, it's just automatically God's going to fix it. And that seems like it's more of a pattern in our community that I've noticed over the years, as opposed to basically really trying to get to the root of what's going on with a child. And then when they start to show signs of it, again, anger, aggression, and that irritability, we kind of pass it off because we never really wanted to deal with it. In a lot of cases, you don't wake up 10 and just be mad. You don't wake up 13 and all of a sudden you got aggression. You don't wake up 15 as a black male and just find yourself irritable. It grows like anything else. And I honestly believe we need to start addressing this at early ages, soon as possible, and be aware, mentally aware to deal with this, because we're missing the boat. We're missing the boat. Every time a black male decides to take his life, young or old, I'm going to stay with the young for this point. There's been something that's been missed. And I'm going to say with the circle of his life, something's been missed, not paid attention to. And if that child was given to you by birth, that's part of your responsibility to know. And if you don't know, find out, learn, do what you got to do. There's no excuses for that. None. So when I look at these rates of going up 144% for ages 10 to 17, I feel sorry for the child. But damn it, sometimes I want to know, who can I look at and go, what the hell's going on? Mm-hmm. I do. Because we don't sit and think about this. This might go off the beaten path just a little bit. How is our race going to survive years from now if the black males keep killing themselves, shooting themselves, each other? What is going on with our race long term? Because when you take away the black male or a male from any race, there's no more male production. There's no more production of children. There is none. We're killing off our own race. We are. And part of it is mental. A big part of it is mental. Don't look outside the community, look deeper inside the community. So that's my thing. At some point, the wake up call, wake up call, it's a wake up bomb. It really is. Because we're losing young males at 10 through 17 years of age, losing them for whatever reason. What are we saying about the longevity of us as a race of black people? That's what we need to wake the fuck up to. Realistically, what are we saying about us? Your reaction, if you have one, Dr. Marcy.
Oh man, it's so nuanced. Um, but 100%, I hear you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that most times and most people don't think long term. Everyone's looking at the moment, or when you talk about goal setting, people are like, "Oh, what do you want to do in the next 3 to 5 years?" That's to them, that's long term goals. Long term goals is beyond 5 years. But if all you can see is what's right in front of you right now, 5 years seems like a really, really long time out. And not even realizing that, 10, 15, 20 years. And when we talk about the generational systems, and I think that this becomes a generational problem from the standpoint that if we don't act now and deal with the behaviors now, so when we talk about 11 to 17, 10 to 17, if we're not dealing with them when they're 10, 11, or 12, by the time they get to be 17, we're not going to be able to deal with them. And that's how they end up either dead or in jail. And we're not wanting to have those conversations about our 10 and 11-year-olds. We're not wanting to say, oh, I need to do an intervention right now because I see this path. And I also want to point out, too, that it's not always aggressive behavior. It's not always lashing out, those types of things. There's also this hidden or silent crisis, as I call it, where they're suppressing emotions. They're holding everything in, looking for things like just changes in their mood and behaviors. Your 10 or 11-year-old, last year when they were 9, they were laughing, they were talking to their friends, they're playing outside, and now all of a sudden they want to stay in their room all the time. Red flag. What is happening with my son? What is happening? Um, being just withdrawing in general. So, they constantly, and some of it is just part of growing up where they naturally kind of move away from wanting to be with their parents all the time. But when you start seeing that same behavior where they're no longer wanting to be with their friends, or the friends that they've had for many years growing up, all of a sudden, yeah, I don't talk to them no more. I don't fool with them no more. That's their language. That's a red flag. There's something going on in their life. There's something that's going on in their relationships. And understand that for young people, those relationships, a year in a child's life of a relationship is like 10 years in an adult's life. So much happens and so many emotions happen. Their body's changing, their mind is changing, their hormones are changing. There's a lot going on in uh, these young individuals. Um, they just lose motivation. They're not excited about the things that they used to be excited about. That's a red flag. Talk to your son. You see them a little bit older when they're 13, 14, 15-ish, and sometimes even younger than that, but they start doing reckless stuff. They're taking unnecessary risks. They're throwing away opportunities. They're self-sabotaging. Stop saying he has an attitude problem and just say he has a problem, and be ready to have an honest conversation about it and realize that you might be part of that problem. Your parenting style might be part of that problem. Your discipline style might be part of that problem. Your availability may be part of that problem. And don't take it personal. As parents, these little rugrats, they don't come with manuals. And so for most of us, we do the best that we can with the tools and the information that we have. And if the tools and the information that you have is not enough, send your son to someone else to get some additional tools, and maybe you can get some more information as well. And we have to be willing to say, I'm okay getting some help with this. Because sometimes we think asking for help for our child, oh, now they're going to look at me some type of way and da 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 da. Ain't nobody really worrying about you realistically. If we're here for the child, we're focused on the child. Yes, we want to know what's happening at home. We want to know where some of this stuff comes from. And so that there becomes this fine line. Like, I think sometimes with parents, and I saw this a lot with my substance abuse clients, a lot of times the parents would not want to have the conversation or didn't want to get the help because they were afraid of what their child was going to tell this person. Oh, what are they going to say? I don't want them to, or they're coaching them on the way to the session. Now, make sure you don't talk about da 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 da. But guess what? Those kids will walk right into the session and be like, my mom said, don't say nothing to you about this, but blah, 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 blah. Because they need to get it out. So if you tell me as my mom or as my dad that this is the person that's going to help you feel better, and then you're going to coach me not to tell them what really is my problem, come on,
No.
man.
Yeah. I
You're
mean,
the problem. Get out your own way.
that's that old thing that, most kids, my age and my generation are probably still here. Don't go putting our business out in the street.
Mm-hmm.
And how you're not going to put your business out there and get your business corrected if it need to be corrected. And another thing I want to lean into is that check-ins are very necessary.
Yeah.
Very necessary. And I know you spoke earlier where kids tend to, and it's true, at some point do not want to be around you, but so what? They have no, as a child, they have no choice. It's still that check-in is necessary, that communication is necessary. And you have to find, even when they don't really want to kind of be around you, you have to find a tactful, creative way to get them to open up and share their feelings. You just can't just say, well, that's just them being a child and teen. No, it's up to us to get them to open up and share their feelings. And I'm all for this. You have somebody to go to and maybe say some things they can't say to you. But again, this doesn't start at 10 or 17 getting them to open up and share their feelings with you. It starts early on
Mm-hmm.
when they're younger. And the check-ins should start when they're younger. But I think check-ins are very necessary because a lot of times, people know, or you should know, when someone says to you about a certain situation, I'm okay, whatever, you should sense and think there's something else behind that. That's just not, that's just not okay. And that's where the check-in comes in. And yes, sometimes you have to do a little progging to kind of get to it, but it's worth it. And I believe we need to start taking those steps of those check-ins, not only with the young, because even older folks need to be checked in on from time to time. We're dealing with stuff that's going on in our life daily. And again, get them to open up and share and let them know they can be comfortable sharing with you. And that's something that I think a lot of us, we joke and say from time to time, ask how somebody's doing. Oh, you won't hear me complain. No, maybe I do want to hear it. Maybe I really do. If it really means something, maybe I really do want to hear it. Let's be more open on our check-in ends with people because a lot of people are going through things and we're not all built the same to deal with some things that we're going through. And sometimes just having somebody just to say something to and realize you could talk about it and maybe get back to you means a lot, could be huge. So check-ins for me are just very necessary. And we have to basically open ourselves up to it. And we need to do more of it. We really realistically do it. Because when you're talking to someone, or you can get a feeling, your hunch will probably tell your intuition say to you, something ain't right here. Something is amiss. I mean, the boat's going a little sideways. Let me kind of find out what I can really, what's going on. Just don't chalk it up as that and go, no, they might be having a bad day because that bad day may turn to something real tremendously wrong. And we need to, in my opinion, humble opinion, come out of that and find out what's really going on. If we're supposed to care and be our keeper, that's our job. That's our responsibility. That doesn't mean being nosy. There's a difference. That's a big difference. Don't go with being nosy trying to find out the gossip and run back and talk. But realistically, let's start to check in and make sure that we're okay. We're better than okay. I don't even like the word okay. I don't. To me, okay is you buy a pizza doesn't taste good is okay. When it comes down to human emotions, I don't want to hear the word okay. I don't. There's something wrong. Let's talk about it. If I care about you enough, I'm open to it. I am. Now, if I don't give a about you 9 out of 10 times, I'm not even asking. I'm not even asking. So when someone's asking, let's be real about it. Let's stop this code of coolness. We think we all, because we're not. We're all human. At the end of the day, we all got the same freaking emotions. We've all been given the same tools. We have. So you think you're being hard when you're all soft inside? F all that. That hardness ain't never done nothing for nobody, man. Nothing for nobody. Put that shit aside. Because the real man is not afraid to share his feelings. Open up, feel vulnerable, and be better. That toughness ain't doing nothing for you. Not a damn thing for you. And a lot of times we fall into that. We want to put that facade on. Ain't a real man ain't out here trying to be hard and run home crying that night. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's okay for us to open up and share. We ain't have to be Superman 24/7 all the time, 7 days a week. No one can. And that's part of our mentality that was given to us as a young child. We're still trying to live on that umbrella. Throw that umbrella away. It doesn't work in 2025. It hasn't worked when it was given to you. We need to come from beneath that. So again, to me, check-ins are necessary. How do you feel about check-ins, Dr. Marcy?
I'm just chuckling because you are so good at check-ins. Let me just tell your audience that everything that you just said is exactly how you are. Um, and you definitely walk the talk as it relates to that. You're very good about check-ins. You're very adamant that okay is not good enough. Um, and so what I will say to that is that many of us didn't come up in that environment. And I think you talked earlier about checking in on young people earlier and more often and not waiting and that sort of thing. But I think when I had mentioned earlier about generational systems and some of this stuff, these our inability to do check-ins or manage some of this stuff comes from how we were raised. And I think you talked about earlier, what stays in this house, what goes on in this house stays in this house. Don't be telling our business, that type of stuff. And it's those old, outdated mentalities that many of us grew up in that we have to kind of break through those molds and be able to manage our young people differently. You have to also remember that the young people of today are 10, 11, 12, 17-year olds today grew up in an internet world. And so they have access to information that we didn't have coming up. They have People have access to them in a way that has never been seen before in history. And with all of that access on both sides comes additional risks. And I see a lot of parents, hand kids phones and tablets and like, here, sit down and play on this and be quiet for a little bit. Maybe we need to not have them encourage them to be quiet so much. Maybe we need to encourage like old school dialogue, dinners across the table, and not fast food and drive-throughs and things like that. Like the world is moving at a fast pace, but our parenting styles and our support systems have got to catch up with that. I think that's where these young people are really falling through the cracks, and not for parents not wanting necessarily to connect with their kids. I think some parents genuinely don't know how to connect with their kids, and our kids are different. I have two kids. My kids could not be more different, for considering they have the same two parents and grew up in the same two households. These children are completely different humans, and they had to be parented differently. And we have to be willing as parents to make adjustments on our side of the coin to deal with the child that we're dealing with. And we can't think that we can treat all of our kids the same. We can't treat all boys the same. We can't treat all girls the same. We have to tailor and customize and constantly be changing how we connect and how we engage. And like you said, those check-ins are important. Um, but we also have to get comfortable with the check-in, because I'll be the first one to be like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And it's not that I'm not necessarily fine, because for the most part I am fine, but yeah, there's something going on, but I just don't want to discuss it. Now, I use that as an example for I'm low risk, but you have to be able to know the difference. And like you were saying a minute ago, like know who you're talking to, get the time, take the time to know your people. And that is one thing that you're really, really good about. And I wish that more people could learn just that very simple, how are you doing? And for the other side, the person that they're asking to be able to be honest about it. And that's hard. And I think we have to kind of admit that for some people that that's hard. They're not
Yeah,
used to having support, or they're not comfortable leaning on people. Or, for I know for a lot of men and a lot of boys, they feel like vulnerability has been weaponized. So that's going to make people want to hold back. And so it's an ongoing conversation. We're not going to cover everything in an hour today, but I think that the conversation has to continue, and just making a platform and a space to have some of those conversations, I think, is critical.
absolutely. The gift of life, the precious gift from God, it wasn't given to be taken away between the ages of 10 and 17. It just wasn't. I strongly believe that's not the purpose, that's not the mission. When a precious gift such as life itself is given unto us from God, that, oh yeah, from 10 to 17, let them decide when they want to basically surrender themselves. With that being said, Dr. Marcy Baptiste, I want you to share with us how we can contact the Sons of Steel and where we can go. And I know you spoke of it earlier, but I want to give that information out for those that may want to tune in and lock in and go there. How can they?
Our website is just simply sonsofsteel.org. So SONSOFSTEEL.org, sonsofsteel.org. We're on Facebook and Instagram as official Sons of Steel. So you can go to any one of those platforms, and the code Reddit assessment is on the website. You can also go directly to just the assessment by going to sonsofsteel.org /CODE-RED. So sonsofsteel.org /code-red. And that will take you directly to that risk assessment to kind of evaluate the level of risk that your young person is facing. And I look forward to hearing from anybody. You can email me directly, also at info@sonsofsteel.org, or you can give us a call at 469-949-6118. So all types of different ways to reach out. And I look forward to hearing from people.
Good stuff. Again, you were given something to birth and you're doing a hell of a job with it. I appreciate you and I appreciate what you're doing.
I appreciate you too. I appreciate your check-ins too.
Yeah, sometimes you don't seem like you like them, but that's okay. Don't stop me. Don't
It
stop me.
doesn't. That's the purpose of these angles. It's like, I'm fine. I'm okay. Like, nah. What's going on?
Oh, laughter is definitely my medicine. Some conversations are tough to have, but that don't mean they should not be had. And that's what I love about, right here when Black men talk, we don't shy away from conversations. We just don't. We don't shy away from things that need to be said. And we will continue to stand firm on that foundation. So when you hear or you click into when Black men talk, if anything you can expect, that's something you can expect and hang your hat on. We're not running away from any conversation or not running away from need to be said. Thank you for always a good us to air. God loves you. We love you too. We get together real soon.